somehow they benefit from it.
So let's go back to 1913. Who were the gentlemen that came together? I would like to call them the guilty party. Who are these people that came together to create this creature?
Well, that's a very interesting topic in itself. At the time that the Federal Reserve Act was passed into law in 1913, there was a lot of conversation in the press and in public discussions about the money trust. The money trust was a kind of a code name that was used in those days to describe the consortium of big, powerful banks and insurance companies in New York that controlled the credit and the money flow in the nation. And the purpose of the Federal Reserve System supposedly was to break the grip of that group. Well, the truth of the matter is that that's exactly the group that wrote the Federal Reserve Act, to make sure that their grip would never be broken. In fact, to make sure that their grip would be transferred into law, so that anybody trying to break their grip would go to jail, as I mentioned a moment ago. So who were these people? There were 7 of them, Gary. The first one was Nelson Aldrich, who was he was a senator. He was the Republican whip in the Senate. He was probably the most powerful of the politicians at the time, next to the president. He was chairman of the National Advisory or National Monetary Commission, the National Monetary Commission, which is the committee of Congress that drafted the Federal Reserve Act. He was a business associate of J.P. Morgan. He was father-in-law to John D. Rockefeller Jr. He was tied up in all the financial dealings in New York, very intimately connected with them, a very wealthy person. And you can imagine he's just the kind of guy who's going to break the grip of the money trust. He was number 1. Number 2 was Abraham Piatt Andrew. He was the assistant secretary of the Treasury at that time, which doesn't describe him too well because it makes him sound like he was a bureaucrat or a politician. His primary connection through family and business experience is banking. He's really came from a banking family, is very close to Wall Street, and that's the reason he was Secretary of the Treasury. The third person there was Frank Vanderlip, who was president of the National City Bank of New York, which was the most powerful of all the banks at that time, and he represented the financial interests of William Rockefeller and the international investment banking house of Kuhn, Loeb and Company. The fourth one there was Henry P. Davison. He was the senior partner of the J.P. Morgan Company. And Charles D. Norton was in that group, and he was president of J.P. Morgan's First National Bank of New York, another one of the giants. The sixth person was Benjamin Strong. He was head of J.P. Morgan's Bankers Trust. He eventually became the first head of the Federal Reserve System. And finally, the seventh person, probably the most knowledgeable of the group in terms of central banking, which was an institution that came from Europe, was Paul Warburg. He was a full partner in Kuhn, Loeb and Company. He was actually a representative of the Rothschild banking dynasty in England and France. And throughout all this period, he maintained a very close relationship to his brother, Max Warburg, who was the head of the Warburg Banking Consortium in Germany and the Netherlands. So those were the 7 people that went to Jekyll Island in 1910 in a highly secret environment there and hammered together all the essential features of what became the Federal Reserve Act. And those 7 men, according to estimates of the period, Gary, controlled either directly through their own wealth or through the institutions that they represented. They controlled about 1/4 of the wealth of the entire world at that time. Wow. So if there was ever a money trust, this was it. And the people of America have no idea that this institution called the Federal Reserve System, which we are told is a means of controlling the big bad bankers, breaking the grip of the money trust, was actually the creature of the money trust and still is so today.
So we're talking about the bankers creating something to control themselves, which they control, which is completely completely ludicrous. So now we've got, you see it. You see Goldman Sachs bankers coming and sitting on the sitting in as Treasury secretaries. They recruit everybody from Wall Street to come and sit. It's like everyone's going to get a turn as Federal Reserve.
Big revolving door.
Yeah, it's just a revolving door. It's just a front, and the Fed just continues like, hey, I need some cash. Let's pump it into the system for you. They're all scratching each other's backs. They're sitting on each other's board of directors, and then there's the congressional oversight. Is there? I mean, how much real congressional oversight is there of the Federal Reserve?
There's 0.000761%, if that. It's probably an overestimation. They have no oversight. They have no control whatsoever over this creature. You see, remember, as I said, this is a cartel. The Federal Reserve System is a cartel, and its members are the banks. So the Federal Reserve System is owned by the banks. And so it's not surprising that the Federal Reserve System comes to the aid of its members, its member banks. That's its destiny. That's why that creature was created. And when people say, I wonder why the Federal Reserve is doing this, why would they do that? They're all indignant. They don't understand what the nature of this creature is. They'll never get it until they learn this history.
So if the Federal Reserve was non-existent, who would be printing the money, so to speak?
Well, it's hard to say what these politicians would come up with. They might come up with some other institution just as bad. I mean, politicians generally like to have the government print the money, and that can be good or bad depending on what kind of money they print. If they print money that's backed by gold or silver, it's an excellent monetary system. But if they print fiat money, which most politicians prefer to do, because that gives them great flexibility and political power, then that's just as bad as the Federal Reserve System. But without the Federal Reserve, I think that the meaning of your question probably is there a better way? And of course there is a better way than having the Federal Reserve creating our money in the name of the government. The better way is to have a monetary system that is backed 100% by gold or silver or some other commodity which has intrinsic value, which can be measured and which anybody can produce if they wish, represent the application of human effort to create it. If you have your money backed by something that takes human effort to create it, now you've got a control on the supply of that money. The supply of money will, under those conditions, the supply of money will automatically expand at exactly the same rate that other goods and services expand, because other goods and services also take human effort. And so as long as people are free to choose what goods or services they wish to spend their human effort to create, they can produce shoes or belts or automobiles or gold or silver, all at their choice. And so when it's their option, and so when the values of one as opposed to the other get out of whack a little bit, and you can make a better living by mining gold than you can by producing shoes, well, then you stop making shoes and you look for a way to get into gold mining. And then the gold mining increases and the supply of gold increases, and then all of a sudden this price comes back down to the value of shoes, and then people go out of mining and back into shoes and so forth. I'm trying to truncate this explanation, but wherever there has been a case in history where money was backed by something substantial, of intrinsic value like gold or silver, the purchasing power of the money has remained constant over thousands of years. The best example I can think of that is to remind people that back in ancient Rome, if a man had a 1-ounce gold coin, he could take it to the shops and he could spend it and buy a very nice toga, a handcrafted belt, and a pair of sandals. That's the cost back 2,000 years ago. Now, 2,000 years have passed. If a man has a gold coin, 1 ounce of gold, he can swap it for Federal Reserve notes and quickly run to the store before its value decreases and spend it on a very nice suit, a handcrafted belt, and a pair of shoes.
Well,
the purchase power doesn't change.
I've heard you use that analogy a lot, and sometimes I wonder because I've gone into like a Men's Warehouse and they have like a suit for $300.